Beyond the Bell, Bloomberg's comprehensive cross-platform coverage of the U.S. market close starts right now.
And right now, we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostick here, Taylor Riggs here, Kaylee Leinz in for Caroline Hyde, counting you down to those closing bells. Here to help take us beyond the bell, it's our global simulcast partners, Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec, bringing together all of our audience across television, radio, and YouTube. And Carol, as we move closer to the close, we are seeing equities right now near the lows of the day.
Well, this is what I love. I love watching the final minutes of trading, the last hour of trading. But in particular, what we have seen over the last 20 minutes or so is that we're seeing more selling going into the close than buying. So there's really a negative tone. Don't forget, we're counting down to that Fed meeting on Wednesday, Tim.
Yeah, seen a lot of selling in crypto, too. The Bloomberg Galaxy Crypto Index down 5.5%. Bitcoin sliding 6.6%, slipping under its 200-day moving average. Taylor.
And I think we've gotten a lot of comments, Tim, that were really interesting about a rate of change on the interest rates. When the Fed moves very quickly, stocks do underperform. But Ed Clissold was saying as long as they go slow and steady and not every meeting, equities actually have been returning on average about 10%. So it really all is about how quickly you are starting to think about these rate hikes.
Yeah, and it's really going to be the attention on the dot plot for that reason, Taylor, come Wednesday. We all pretty much know they're going to accelerate the pace of the taper. They forecasted that quite well. It's really about the guidance and what the hiking cycle is going to look like in terms of duration and speed, Romaine.
And I think what you're seeing today is kind of similar to maybe what we saw last week, towards the end of last week. It's kind of positioning ahead of some of these central bank meetings here. A little defensiveness on this day here, but you're still seeing that kind of round robin across the various sectors.
And dare we say that maybe there's a little bit of profit taking going on. It's been a tremendous year for the equity markets. Maybe some tax loss selling also as we count down the last few weeks of 2021, Romaine.
Yeah, absolutely. You're basically talking about 20% gains right now on the major indices. For the day here, you're looking at a Dow Jones Industrial Average going to finish the day about 0.9%. Similar story for the S&P 500, right around the lows of the day, down 0.9%, 46.69. As we wait for those final numbers to settle here, the Nasdaq Composite right now down about 217 points or 1.4%. And the Russell 2000, which of course was a big laggard last week, looks like it's going to start the week as a relative laggard as well, down about 1.4% right now, 2180 and change. And for anyone watching Apple's going to finish the day down 2%, Carol.
Yeah, and it was really tough to be a semiconductor. Anyone in that area. The Philadelphia stocks down about 2.6%. On the other side, I'm going to say the VIX, the volatility index, up almost 2 points here, Taylor.
Well, and Carol, I'm going to hop in there because you mentioned that the semis are underperforming. They are one of the worst performers in terms of an industry group level when you look beneath the surface of the S&P 500. The biggest underperformer is actually the autos index. A big part of that is Tesla, which actually is at its lowest now since October 22nd. But by and large, it's really just the cyclicals that underperformed. It's the defensives that outperformed, the likes of pharma and food and beverage, those staples and those bond proxies doing quite well.
Why do you think all the autos fell today? Because it wasn't just Tesla. You have Ford down like 5%, GM.
It's interesting. I actually wondered if it was tied to the Harley news and just everyone moving toward
There was
EVs
a broader
and it's a market share kind of issue.
Ford is up 132.
Some of that reopening travel trade in general.
Yeah, and they've also had a tremendous run. It's a good question, and you do wonder. I think you're right, Taylor. Like, is it a concern about the economy slowing down again, and maybe people aren't going to be out? I don't know, asking for cars again. I don't know.
And to your point, Ford has more than doubled this year. GM has, of course, been on a tear, and of course, we know what Tesla is. It's just been to the moon.
All right, to the moon and to Mars eventually is what they're going to do. All right, let's go through some of the gainers, folks, on this Monday. Arena Pharmaceuticals.
What kind of car do you drive?
I'm a station wagon kind of girl.
No, you don't have a station wagon.
I really do.
I don't believe that.
I grew up in a wagon. I love station
wagons. Do you
wagons.
own a station wagon now?
I do own a...
What?
My name is Carol Massar, and I own a station wagon.
Okay,
Romaine,
it's actually my third
I have a station
wagon.
I have a station wagon too, Romaine.
It's my third wagon.
Yeah, I do.
Who? I didn't know they still sold station wagons.
Subaru
Not
wagon.
everybody can have a Maybach. I'm just going to say
A
it.
Subaru. Station wagon. Wow. I thought you guys were cooler.
All right.
No, I'm not. I'm definitely not.
You know what was really cool? If you own shares of Arena Pharmaceuticals, because, man, that stock was up more than 80% in today's session. Pfizer, of course, making a deal, offering to pay $100 a share in an all-cash deal. It's about double what Arena's price was on Friday. Not quite there. You can see it kind of traded off its highs, but nonetheless closing up 80% there.
You know what I thought was great about this deal, but from the Pfizer's perspective, was it's a cash deal.
Yep.
And they talked about how a lot of this is the cash that they generated off of the COVID vaccine, and there were a lot of people questioning, the COVID vaccine boost isn't going to really last. And they're basically finding a way to sort of take the gains from that and I guess make some long-term moves here with Arena.
Right, and which is what we look for in pharmaceuticals, right? To do deals, to think about what's going to be the momentum going forward. The point is, though, there's also going to be some regulatory scrutiny of this one, so it ain't done yet. So we'll keep an eye on that. Got to mention, Matt Miller was talking about Harley Davidson. He was checking out and talking to them. That stock was up almost 20% at its highs today, finishing the day up 4.7%. Big move, saying its electric motorcycle division will combine with a SPAC. It's going to be called Livewire, and it will list on the New York Stock Exchange under LVW. Got to mention Peloton. Had to go there, guys. Up 7.3%.
He's alive. Didn't die.
Don't you wonder, like, is he just recuperating somewhere and he's going to come back a little bit later on? No.
I think this is all a setup for Samantha's return.
I do too. She did send flowers. Another spoiler alert. Okay. Anyway, an ad out over the weekend. I love this, Ryan Reynolds. We love you as well. Basically, Mr. Big.
Yes, we do.
What's not to love? It's good to be Blake Lively. Anyway, Mr. Big apparently, according to this latest ad, did not die, and he's saying he's feeling great and he's going to take another
Maybe
ride.
you can offer him a ride in your
Peloton
station wagon,
Wait.
Carol.
Show, right?
There's an equity angle. It's up 7.3% in today's session. All right, Tim, take it away.
All right, Ryan Reynolds, if you're watching, there's a spot in the station wagon if you want to come hang out, okay? Let's talk a little bit about the decliners today. Moving the market lower was Tesla. We heard Kaylee talk about this today. Really dragging down the S&P 500 and consumer discretionary sector there as well. Tesla, among the worst performers on a points basis and on a percentage basis, down about 5%. No real news bringing it down. Carol did point me in the direction of this Barron's article that came out that talked a little bit about a potential drop for Tesla very early this morning. Also, EVs continuing that sell-off that we saw on Friday where a lot of EV stocks got hammered. Let's talk about United Airlines. We did talk a little bit about the travel-exposed stocks weighing on the broader market today. COVID fears spooking investors amid this fresh round of negative headlines. It wasn't just United that took a hit, but finished the day down by more than 5%. And then AMC Entertainment. Romaine, you spoke a little bit about what we saw with West Side Story, that missing expectations.
Did you go see this weekend?
I didn't know. I mean, I haven't
Did
been
you
to a
see
theater in years.
Yeah, well, I mean, I've only been to the theater once since the crisis. I saw the James Bond movie, but you talk about only, what, $10.5 million in sales. I mean, that's pretty weak. I mean, particularly for a movie that's, I guess, supposed to be a blockbuster, right? This is Disney. This is Steven Spielberg.
Yeah, it is, and that's certainly part of it. And I also think that, you know, it's a meme stock coming back to earth. We saw other meme stocks move lower today, and AMC's down, what, about 50% since its November high. It's not even its yearly high, but it's November high when Adam Aron, the company's CEO, started talking about selling the stock.
Do you know what any of the other movies were in the top 10 off the top of your head?
No idea.
Do you?
Yeah, well, I have it in front of me. It's House of Gucci, Ghostbusters, Encanto, Eternals, and Clifford the Big Red Dog, which I did not know there was a movie out about. But it brought in $1.3 million in the most recent weekend here.
Let's take it back to bond yields, Romaine.
Oh, yeah.
As you try to take us away from that.
Are they up or are they down?
It is a yield down kind of day. And what is so interesting that Romaine, stop that. 64 basis points on the 2-year, you guys, which is a far cry from 10, which is where we started the year. So despite some of the coming down in yields on the longer end and the flatness of the yield curve, really the focus here is on the shorter end of that curve. Carol, let me just read you a note that I read this morning from Deutsche Bank. Yields historically move slightly lower on average in the year leading up to the first rate hike, but then they turn higher almost immediately around the first hike in that cycle and rising for that year. But around year 2 and around year 3, that's when you typically see yields fall again, given the slowdown of the economy and inflation. So what they're saying is this is to be expected.
All right, so they're not surprised by any of it. So it all makes sense, logic. We love that when we hear someone's analysis when it comes to the various trades in the market. I have to say, I've been kind of obsessed with the Bloomberg Big Take today. We talked with Tom Orlick about, what could possibly go wrong. And one of the things he pointed out is the divergence that we're going to see between U.S. central bank policy and Chinese central bank policy. These are your two biggest, or among your two biggest global central banks that are out there. And what happens to markets, to economic growth globally when you have these two powerhouses pursuing different directions. We know the Fed is becoming more hawkish, and China is really worried about slowdowns in their economy, and they are taking easier steps there.
Yeah, and this is a good point for our TV audience. You can see the central bank decisions ahead Wednesday, the Fed, of course, the BOE, the ECB, Mexico, Turkey, Switzerland on Thursday, and Japan and Russia on Friday. We talk about the idea of a policy mistake by some of these big banks, particularly in the U.S. and Europe. There are a lot of people now saying that policy mistake was already made. What we need right now is a policy correction.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how Christine Lagarde on Thursday fares in a world that seems to be moving toward tightening. She has tried to stay dovish and stick with that transitory word that Chairman Powell has now retired. So how do we see language change, Taylor, not just from the Fed, but from Lagarde as well?
And Carol, we sort of just wrap it up by looking at that global perspective. A lot of the EM, a lot of LatAm, they've already addressed this big inflation. They've already started to really undergo that hiking cycle, and it sort of leaves the U.S. one of the last remaining few to tackle it head on.
I thought you were going to wrap it up with Chris North or Ryan Reynolds. Let's vote here.
Haley called him Chris North.
It wasn't.
No, it's not.
How do you not
I was
know his
reading the
last name?
script. Blame the teleprompter.
All right, we got to run. Guys, have a good evening. All right, we'll see you again, everyone. That's going to do it for our cross-platform coverage, our market wrap Beyond the Bell here on radio, TV, and YouTube. We'll see you again, same time, same place tomorrow.